everyone. I'm Ann Welker. I am Suffolk County Legislator for the SouthFork, and I am so fortunate to be here today with Chris Paparo on South by SouthFork, which is conversations with community activists and just amazing legends like Chris. So Chris is the director, the manager of the Marine Science Center at Stony Brook, Southampton, but he also has a side hustle, a good side hustle, as owner of Fish Guy Photos. We are thrilled you're here today with us, Chris.
Well, thanks for having me.
Chris, are you a little tired?
A little bit, just a little bit, more than normal, yeah, a little bit.
Why?
I just got back from an amazing dive vacation gig, let's put it that way, it was a gig in the Solomon Islands. So it was 38 hours from my doorstep to their doorstep. And right now it is tomorrow morning there. So the jet lag has got me all sorts of screwed up. So yeah, it's a little bit more tired, but I'm tanner for it. So it's good.
There you go. It's always good to be tan, for sure. So Chris, how did you, where did you grow up and how did you find the natural world to be something that was so important in your life?
I'm born and raised on Long Island. I grew up in Holbrook, went to Sachem. But my dad took me fishing when I was 6, and that was kind of the catalyst, and I've been hooked ever since. And it was just a passion of mine was fish. Originally I wanted to learn more about how to catch bigger fish and more fish. And then as I learned more about fish, I was like, wow, these things are really fascinating, and I just wanted to study them. And then from a young age, I was like, I'm going to be a marine biologist, and I'm going to go to Southampton College, and I'm going to work for, at the time was Okinos. And I was in second grade, I was saying that, and that was the path. I went to Southampton College, graduated with a BS in marine science. I volunteered with Okinos, which many of you might not know who they are, but that's now the current day New York Marine Rescue Center. I then got a job with they went bankrupt. I worked with the Riverhead Foundation, which was the new group. They then were trying to build an aquarium, which was my original passion. So when I graduated college, I actually had an opportunity to work for the Long Island Aquarium from the ground up, building it. So I was a senior aquarist there for 13 years. I then left there for some other opportunities and landed a job, my current job, where I'm the manager of the Marine Sciences Center for Stony Brook, Southampton. So it's born, raised, and still here. Yeah.
Right. And some of what you talk about, you spend couple weeks a year maybe in the Solomon Islands, but most of the work you do is right here on Long Island, and people forget sometimes how much is right here for us to see, right?
Yeah, I like to focus on Long Island because it's my backyard. I don't have to pay to go somewhere, it's here. And I think one of the biggest problems we face environmentally around the world is we're always taught to care about other places. Growing up, it was save the rainforest, save the African plains, save the Great Barrier Reef. And yeah, those places all need saving, but what about Shinnecock Bay, the Long Island Sound, the Great South Bay? They're here. And I think if more people just focused on their backyard, we wouldn't have so many of these problems.
What's in your backyard?
Right now, I'm watching owls, screech owls. Wood ducks will be in another couple months. So I have all sorts of stuff in my own backyard too. But it's just that, care about your home, before moving on. I get to go away, and I love going to these places and seeing their environment, but it's always good to come home.
And speaking about home, how do you go to and from work each day? Because you take a rather circuitous route, right?
I usually go way out of my way to get to work. It depends on what I'm looking for. Some mornings it's by boat, and I'm on the water by 5, and I'm cruising around looking for whales or dolphins or fishing if I'm out fishing. Or this time of year, I'm just driving around different parks or beaches, just looking for nature, And
But you take Dune Road
I
most
go
of
on
the time
Dune Road
when you
quite
drive,
a bit, which is
right?
doubles my mileage every morning, but it beats sitting in traffic.
Totally.
The traffic, as out here on the East End in the morning, the trade parade, as we call it, is tough. So I either have to be at work by 5 or I get in by 9. By 5, there's nothing, it's dark, so I usually just come in a little bit later, come in at 9, and just go sit at the beach for a few hours, yeah.
Who do you see? What do you see when you're down there?
Depends on the time of year. Like this time of year, I'm looking for seals, snowy owls. This time of year, there's a lot more eagles than summertime because there's a lot of things passing through. And sometimes you don't know, and I think that's what's exciting. Some days you just stumble upon a bald eagle just sitting on a piling on the side of a road. I'm like, well, that was cool. And then the next day I might not see anything. But if you're not out there, you're not gonna see it.
Right. I know that at one point, there were snowy owls sort of on the eastern side of Shinnecock Inlet. I don't know so much about the western side. Have
This-
you seen?
Yeah, this year, there's snowy owls on Long Island, but they either are much further west or they're much further east. I have not seen any in the Hampton Bays, West Hampton area this season. And I've put in a fair amount of time looking, you know. So, yeah, but again, that changes. If they were here every year, it would be boring. It's like, oh, there's a snowy owl, you know, but it's like, oh, I haven't seen one in a couple of years. So it makes it a little bit more exciting.
Right. I loved when I could go to the east side of the Shinnecock Inlet, and the first time I saw one, he was sitting right on top of a fence post, and I looked past and then I looked back because it was like, oh, that's so
Something you're not expecting to
cool,
see, right? Yeah.
right?
Or if it's on the ground, it looks like a piece of garbage, because unfortunately, we tend to see more plastic bags and stuff like that. But yeah, you gotta slow down and take a second look.
Right, totally. So how did Fish Guy Photos come about? Like,
Yeah, excuse me. Originally, it was a dream of just being a photographer that's gonna go around the world, and I'm gonna sell all my photography, and realized quickly it's not an easy thing to do. So I started writing, which is also wasn't an easy thing for me to do, because I'm not a writer, or wasn't a writer, I should say. But through good mentors, I've been published about 150, 160 times, locally, regionally, nationally. And I'm president of the New York State Outdoor Writers Association, and I'm a director with the Outdoor Writers Association of America. So I kind of got pulled in to writing, but then I was able to sell articles based on my photos. So now I was selling photography to help that. And then it just kind of snowballed into lecturing. So as I was giving information on Facebook or Instagram, I was like, people were really excited about the information. So I started offering lectures, and now I offer 13 different lectures, most of which are Long Island. I got a few tropical lectures here and there, or fishing lectures, but just about our local wildlife, yeah.
and who do you offer the lectures to?
Mostly public libraries. You know, Long Island's, we're fortunate, we have a lot of public libraries. So I speak from Montauk Library all the way into Queens. Fishing clubs, garden clubs, the Daughters of the American Revolution. I speak for them every year at one of their major events that they do. So, yeah, really anybody that has an organization that wants me to speak, I'm available.
Oh, it's so awesome. And then you also do a lecture series in Riverhead.
Yeah, so I host a lecture series called Geek Talks. It's at a brewery, Uber Geek Brewing in Riverhead. And originally it was just a way for me to help my friends who own the brewery and make me a couple bucks, make them a couple bucks on a night where they're slow. And it snowballed. We were having 100 people at a time. And at the time, only had a couple lectures. So I started bringing in friends. And honestly, I like bringing in grad students I work with to give them an opportunity to speak to the public, not the science community. So I don't consider myself a scientist because I'm not researching, I'm not saying anything. I'm educating people. I'm more of a naturalist. And scientists and naturalists sometimes, and educators are usually a little bit different. So I give them a list of rules. No charts, no graphs, no statistics. Leave the science at home. I want pictures and videos, and just tell me a story about your research and what you're doing. Some of them get it, some don't. You know, it takes a little bit of tweaking, but it's my way of kind of giving back and trying to help the next generation of scientists be better educators, better communicators, you know, because I think that's our biggest problem is people don't get it. Not that they're dumb, they didn't study it for all these years. So tell it in a way that they're gonna understand it so they can leave and make a difference down the road.
Translate,
Yeah, translate it.
right? Yeah, when I first heard you speak about that was how you sort of filled your ranks.
Yeah.
It's just genius.
Yeah,
Because
'cause
it's so important.
we don't, things like climate change and stuff often are not understood because, again, the people that are telling us have studied it for 30 or 40 years. Well, tell us in a way that we understand. Again, it's not that people are dumb. I don't know anything about a car engine, nothing, but mechanics do. That's what they've studied, so it's the same idea, just tell it that they understand it. And it's a lot of fun, so the brewery gets some business, the speakers get some business, and the crowd gets an education.
Right,
So it's
food
great.
truck,
Yeah, and this summer coming up will be 10 years
really?
since the
Wow.
first one I did.
Wow,
So
that's
we're
awesome.
planning some big stuff for the anniversary.
Like what?
Surprise
Oh,
stuff.
sorry.
We might go old school and go back outside. We used to do them outside
Oh,
under
you
the
did?
stars with a big screen and But then we moved indoors because it was just easier, we didn't have to deal with weather. So we're gonna try and do some of that stuff, I think, this summer.
Nice. What are a couple that you have coming up, or a couple that have been in the past few months?
So the next one is about domestication of cats. The last one was about using a glider, so an automated glider that goes underwater to study whales and krill. We've had talks about, we have one coming up about 18th century cooking, old school baseball, how crabs affect the thickness of clams' shells. So it's everything from marine science to, like I said, sports, because it's geek topics. There's geeks about everything. We had an astronomy one, they were talking about asteroids and stuff. So it really depends on the mix of who I can find.
Super
Yeah.
cool. And there, like, besides you, has anybody repeated?
We've had a couple requests to come back. The
Okay.
bats and tequila was a fun one.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Bats and tequila?
Yeah, so bats in places like the Amazon and Mexico, they feed on nectar, their nectar, and you have a lot of tequila farms, growing agave. Well, if they cut them before they go to bloom, so there's no food for the bats. So they've worked out a deal with certain growers that if they leave a certain amount of crop to flower, the bats have food, and then they'll certify the tequila as bat-friendly tequila. Can't go wrong with that. We're saving bats by having a drink of tequila. So that was a very popular one. That speaker has come back a couple times. Steve Tettelbach, who you may know, he's come back and given several talks. In fact, he's giving a talk this semester about seashell collecting, which is his big hobby.
Oh,
So that should be a lot
I
of
totally
fun.
know him with scallops.
Yeah,
That's
he's
so
done a
much-
scallop talk. His last talk was about old bottles, because he's a bottle collector. So he dives and finds old bottles. So he had some crazy stuff, but he's a big time shell collector. So he's gonna be talking about shells and all the cool stuff he's collected. So yeah, so we do have quite a few speakers that come back around.
That's awesome. And you also do some work with SOFO,
Yeah.
with sharks?
Yeah,
Can you
so,
talk-
so I'm part of the SouthFork Natural History Museum Shark Research Team. So I was one of the founding members of it before it was officially at SOFO. And it's awesome to see where it's grown. We've grown, participants. We're working with Stony Brook University now. We've tagged well over 400 sharks, 14 different species. So it's been really exciting. My role is I'm more I want to say the PR guy. I do a lot of the photography, videography. I do a lot of public lectures about the research that we've done. I just gave a talk for the Iconic Landing up in Southold about the work that we do. So that's kind of my role. But yeah, it's awesome. Some amazing research papers have been published just from the work that we've been doing.
Oh, that's super cool. Like what? Like what kind of research?
The major one was a research paper that came out showing that the South Shore of Long Island is it is officially known as a nursery ground for young of the year white sharks, so baby great whites. So that was our first major paper, and there's been several out lately of just about talking about what temperatures they prefer, depths they prefer. So it's been great. We're getting a lot of really peer-reviewed, published research out of the stuff that started with just 4 friends fishing.
That's so
It's been great.
cool. Can you talk just a little bit about Shinnecock Bay and the restoration project there, and maybe the designation as a
Yeah.
hope spot too?
Yeah,
'Cause
so
it's kind of
It's a big deal. It's a
Yeah.
very big deal. So at Stony Brook University, there's a couple of the researchers work together to form the Shinnecock Bay Restoration Program. Some of that work has been planting clams in western Shinnecock Bay. We've put over 5 million hard-shell clams in the bay. Since then, we haven't seen a brown tide. There's been work with planting eelgrass. We've seen the eelgrass beds expanding. We're doing fish surveys. And all that work has been showing to be positive. And locally, a lot of other towns are using that drawing, the game plan that we've used to do it in their own areas. But then Sylvia Earle from the Blue Ocean contacted us and actually put us on the map as a hope spot. And other places that she's listed as a hope spot was the Galapagos Islands. So it shows the work from the community. So not just the researchers, but the local baymen, the local politicians, everyone working together for the greater cause of the bay. And yeah, so it's been great to get that kind of recognition. And it's something community, it's based, again, our backyard.
Yep.
We worked on our own backyard to make a difference, and it worked.
Thank you for
Yeah.
that. Thank you for that explanation, and also for just the important work for Shinnecock, because like when I think back to like the 1980s, 1985, specifically when the first brown tide, it was, I just remember
huge
how
hit.
upset my dad was at that point. You brought a few pictures with you
Yeah,
today,
yeah.
some video maybe too. We could, maybe if you just take a look as they come through.
Hey,
What's that?
those are baby ospreys, so bald eagle. But the osprey, that's a nest at the college. So when I first started there, a year or two later, was told, there's some money available for some things at Southampton. You know, we're thinking about a tide gauge, and I'm like, I want an osprey platform. And they're like, oh, I'm like, we need an osprey platform. So anyway, we took earmarked some money for the osprey platform, we printed up. And I'm an alum of LIU Southampton, as you know, and that place is a special place for me, so I'm super excited to be there for this new chapter of the college. But I named them Raoul and Mary after your parents, you know, because Raoul founded that research center and just changed a lot of people's lives. So it was a way to remember him, and we have a story of all the chicks that raise and come and go. So it's been super exciting. In fact, we're mid-February right now, so they'll be here in another month. Raoul will be back soon, and we'll see what this season brings. So yeah, I was up there taking garbage out of the nest, so that's why I was able to get such a close picture. Raoul had brought a plastic bag to the nest, so Captain Brian brought the RV Peconic right next to it. We were able to get the garbage out, but I wasn't going to not take a picture. That's a bald eagle I was talking about earlier. It was just sitting on a pole right on Dune Road. I took this picture from my car. So, you know, you don't always have to go far to see this stuff. You just have to slow down. You just have to pay attention. This is another osprey nest in the Hamptons. This was West Hampton, though. They didn't end up nesting there, but these eagles were just kind of hanging out, sitting there. And I'm like, wow. Again, just by myself. No one was there. It was just kind of neat to see.
That's an amazing picture.
Scallops, you know, the bay scallop is an important part of the culture of the East End. Unfortunately, their numbers are way down. But again, at Stony Brook, we're doing a lot of work trying to fix that problem, trying to see what caused it, what we could do to fix it. But that was one I took in Shinnecock Bay. You know. The blowfish, another staple of the East End. You know, as a kid, I remember hearing stories about they were so abundant you could grab them out of the water and the chicken of the sea. But as a kid, I never saw them. There were one or two, nothing. But in the last couple of years, they've made a resurgence. This was a picture I took in the Peconic, Great Peconic Bay. You go out there now, wiggle your toes, and they come over and bite your toes, just like the stories my grandfather told me. So, you know, so there's been a lot of positive stuff coming from that. Blue claw crabs, again, another staple of the bay. You know, Old Bay and a soda pop. You know, it's a great, great combination. But yeah, it's also Shinnecock Bay. Summer flounder, again, another popular game fish on our area. Better known as fluke locally. Again, that's also Shinnecock Bay. This is on a night dive with some of the researchers that were studying eelgrass. I went out with them just to tag along, and this one was sitting in the sand just off the grass.
Amazing camouflage. Right?
Unbelievable.
My favorite camouflage.
And there are seals, harbor seals, and they're our winter residents. You know, they show up mid-October, we see a few, and then they're here till about the end of March. I've seen as many as 200 in Shinnecock Bay hauled out on a sandbar like this. And at the college, we work with SOFO, we work with Cresley, and we work with AMSES doing public tours of the seals. We take our boats out and they get an education about it. But harbor seals are abundant now, but at one point they were non-existent. When I was a kid, we once in a while you would see a seal, but they were heavily hunted. Due to conservation and protections, their numbers have come back. So now there's a lot of looking at how many are they, where are they feeding, trying to learn more about them so we can better understand it. And of course, the humpback whales. I mean, talk about its comeback. Humpback whales in our region in the North Atlantic are not listed as endangered or threatened anymore, which is a huge accomplishment. These were whales that were hunted to near extinction, but if you look how close they are to shore, they're here. You can sit on beaches like Rogers Beach or Cooper's. That was the one I was thinking. Cooper's Beach. I'm sorry, not Rogers. But Cooper's Beach or Tiana Beach in the early morning, and they're right there in the surf zone because they're feeding on bunker. Which is another conservation success where we've regulated this, the harvest of them, and we're starting to see a lot more bunker, which bring in whales, bring in sharks, and you can see this one is feeding on a bunch of bunker. A lot of them are lucky this time, but, but that's why we now see all these sharks. We're starting to see the whales, dolphin, the osprey benefit from the bunker as well. So, it fuels everything, and that's actually two of the kids taking their first flight. You can see they have the orange eyes.
Their eyes change color?
Yeah, so you can
Oh,
see
I didn't
here,
know that,
mom's
Chris.
got yellow eyes and the babies have bright orange eyes.
Oh, I totally
So that's
didn't know
one way to
that.
tell, and
Age.
their eyes will get yet more yellow as they get older. But yeah, those first year birds will have those eyes. That's pretty common with hawks. Monarch butterflies migrating, in the fall, if you're lucky, you'll see a fall roost. I've seen them where there's hundreds of them, thousands in fact. Lately, their numbers are declining. We're not seeing as many. So last year, I only saw it for a couple days and there was only a handful. But like early 2000s, there were times where literally there would be thousands of butterflies in pine groves along Dune Road and actually the whole South Shore of Long Island as they migrate to Mexico. And there's Raoul and Mary again. That's Raoul up on the perch, Mary in the nest, and a couple chicks poking their heads up there. That's my 4th of July picture, with the American flag in the background. Sea stars, a lot of the stuff that I photograph, like sea stars especially, everyone's like, when I was a kid, they were all over the place, we'd see them, and I'm like, we don't see them anymore. And I'm always like, when was the last time you turned over rocks and flipped things around? And they're like, oh my God, they're still there. There's been ups and downs with their population, but I find a lot of times as people get older, they don't act like a kid anymore. They don't go turning over rocks or exploring. That's not what you're supposed to do. Okay, go explore. Go turn over rocks, play in the mud. You'll start seeing sea stars again. Yeah. Seahorses, same thing. They're very common around here. But who likes to go swimming with seaweed? Nobody. That's why they like the South Shore beaches because they're seaweed free. If you don't go to a seaweed patch or an eelgrass patch, you're never going to see a seahorse, or very rare. So. You got to go where they are, and it's not always pleasant, at that point. And everyone's probably the most hated fish on Long Island, the sea robin. They're one of my favorites, but when people go fishing for fluke, they catch sea robins. I hate this fish, blah, blah, blah. And they're poisonous, they're venomous. They make all these excuses, which is totally bogus. They're not venomous, they're not poisonous. In fact, they're delicious. They make a great taco, ceviche, beer battered. It's one of my favorite recipes. So. And there's the Hope Spot, Shinnecock Bay. Well, that's Ponquag Bridge right there in the middle. And that spot means a lot to me also because that's kind of, except Shinnecock Canal is where I started fishing. But I've spent more hours under that bridge than probably anywhere else on Long Island in the water. So a few years ago when they were talking about tearing it down, I was pretty active with trying to save it. And I'm glad it was saved because it's an amazing spot. It's probably one of the best dive locations, shore dives in the Northeast.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
definitely.
Have you ever dove, there's your snowy owl.
Yeah.
Have you, because the old bridge,
Yeah.
the rickety old one,
Yeah.
where did that go?
So the middle part they pulled out, but the two ends are still there, and that's where I tend to do most of my diving, under the old bridge. I do swim out to the new bridge, but there's more life, it seems like, under the old bridge, because all the old pilings, they've been there forever, they got so much life growing on them. Sponges, anemones, corals. Yes, we even have corals here on Long Island. So it's just an amazing spot.
So circling back to the seals for a second. So the shot that you had was the seals that are on the islands, right?
They
They're
hold out
just-
on a sandbar. Yeah.
So what about though when people see seals hold out on the beach?
Sometimes they're sick, but more times than not, they're fine. Especially now in February and March, you're going to start seeing a lot of gray seal pups. They're born in January. 3 weeks later, mom wants nothing to do with them. They're weaned at 3 weeks. It's a big ocean in January. So they haul out to rest. And if you see one, keep your distance because they can bite and will bite. 2, they can have diseases that you can get. And 3, it's illegal to harass them. And harassment is not just poking at them or hurting them. Changing their behavior is considered harassment. So observe from a distance, call the New York Marine Rescue Center's hotline to report it. And they may or may not come out to see it because, again, many times they've already know about it and they'll monitor it. These seals need to rest, sometimes for 2 or 3 days. They'll just sit there, they're resting, getting their strength back up, and they'll go back out. Don't try to feed them. There were people last year feeding them tuna steaks and calamari rings and stuff. Don't feed them. just let them be, leave them, call the rescue center. Don't get mad at the rescue center for not coming out, because again, they're the professionals, they know these seals are there. Not everything that beaches is sick. They do come out to rest, they sleep on the beach, they'll do things like that. So, it's always, we love when people are excited and are concerned, but just make sure to report that and follow the officials. They know it, these people do this for a living.
And put your dog on the leash?
Keep your dog on your leash, because again, the dog can get diseases that the seals have, definitely. So if they're sick or whatever,
They are super cool.
They're awesome.
When they're hauled out though, and
Oh,
it's
yeah,
so
they sit
like
like
and
little
you can-
bananas, they
Right.
cup up,
Right.
But yeah, observe them from a distance and respect them.
And I love the tracks they leave as they,
They pull through the sand. So many times you get to the beach, I'm like, here's the track coming out, where did it go? And you look and there it is, sitting up in the dunes somewhere. Or you'll see that and you'll see an area that's all flattened, and then the track going back down to the water. So I'm like, all right, that's where it slept last night, and then it went back to the water at, sunrise probably.
but I never knew they would haul out for 2 or 3 days
Yeah.
sometimes. That's crazy, 'cause
sometimes.
usually I would go back in the morning if
Yeah.
we're in the afternoon.
More so with the pups. The
Okay.
adults generally, they haul out at low tide, they rest, and they go back out and feed. But that little pup that's been swimming hard in the ocean, avoiding sharks, avoiding this, avoiding that, trying to catch food, it's tiring. And they put on a lot of weight in that time when they're weaning, so it's not like they're emaciated and starving. They've got a lot of calories packed onto them, but when mom kicks them out. So again, they'll just sit there for a couple days, just, report them, observe them, and, that's the way you can help.
And Chris, where do people find you? Like, how do people find Fish Guy? Because you're kind of everywhere.
I am on all the social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, Vimeo. You can find me at Fish Guy Photos, all one word, at Fish Guy Photos. You can hit me up on all of those. You can email me at fishguyphotos@gmail.com if you need to reach me that way, or send me a message. But yeah, and again, I try to post everything, at least once a day. I try to post something.
Wow.
So if you enjoy it and like it, help me by clicking like or sharing it, because that does help me quite a bit when people engage on my posts. I have a lot of jobs, so sometimes I don't always write back right away, but I do read everything and appreciate it, because again, it does help me get the word out when people start clicking. Even just clicking like helps out a lot.
That's awesome. And they can always also show up. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Chris. I really appreciate
You're
you
welcome.
being
Thanks for
here
having me.
today.
This is
Thank you
great.
to LTV. And thank you to our intern, Cora Nigro, for helping to research all about Chris. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.